The Election of 1888, Grover Cleveland versus Benjamin Harrison, by Intellectuality.
Part 1.
The Haymarket riots were caused by anarchists, but they blamed it on the Knights of Labor. Although labor unions were not that much trouble, it caused a little bit of uneasiness for the higher class. Grover Cleveland brought in federal troops to crush the riot, and he proved that he wanted stricter laws and order in the country.
The Dawes Act was signed in 1887. It was important in the context to the 1888 election. The Dawes Act removed Native Americans from their ancestral grounds, and it gave them a contract on whether they wanted to live on the land and farm on it to get some land, or they could just leave the land and go somewhere else. But what will happen is that this would somewhat successfully help assimilating Native Americans into the American society. And since it was very successful and was passed by Grover Cleveland, it's pretty important in the context of the 1888 election.
The Interstate Commerce Act was passed in 1887, and it prohibited rebates and pulls in railroads. It also required that railroads publish their rates openly. It forbade unfair discrimination against shippers, and also outlawed charging more for a shorter haul than for a longer one on the same line. Significantly, it also set up the Interstate Commerce Commission, also known as the ICC, to administer and enforce this new legislation. Basically, it regulated interstate commerce and made sure that railroad prices were not unjust. This is really important to note because it was the first large-scale attempt made by Washington to regulate businesses for the interest of society at large. If Grover Cleveland is elected in this election, he might try to reinforce this law and control the big illicit business as well. Another thing really important to note is significantly high tariffs around this time. The tariff of 1883 was also known as the Monroe Tariff, and it reduced high tariff rates only marginally, so it did leave in place fairly strong protectionist barriers. The surplus in the Treasury did lead President Grover Cleveland to battle for a lower tariff, and he sent the bill to Congress. This is important to note because one of the main issues of the 1888 election is tariffs.
Part 2.
The 1888 election was between Republican candidate Benjamin Harrison, shown all the way here to the left, and Democrat Grover Cleveland, shown here to the right. In the center you can see the third-party candidate named Clinton B. Fisk. He was unanimously voted as the candidate for the Prohibition Party. The Prohibition Party's main platform consisted of prohibiting the drinking of alcohol.
Grover Cleveland was the Democratic candidate, and his vice president was Allen G. Thurman, who was a whopping 75 years old. In his presidency, Cleveland gave a bill to Congress to reduce the current tariff, but due to his secrecy, his party turned on him. However, he was the only prominent candidate at the time, so the Democrats were forced to make him their candidate. Cleveland's platform was also mainly against the idea of high tariffs, and they supported statehood for Western states. A majority of his followers were also agricultural-based people. Benjamin Harrison was the candidate for the Republican Party, and his vice president was Levi Morin. Now that the Democratic president became irrational, the Republicans knew that they would surely win this election. Also, many business owners were alarmed by what Cleveland believed. Because of this, the Republicans raised an amazing $3 million for their campaign, although some of that was from bribing. Benjamin Harrison wanted to protect the public from monopolies. Republicans also usually supported protective tariffs and supported the use of gold and silver as currency. In addition, they supported pensions for veterans. The main idea in this election, however, was tariffs. If the Democrats won, there would be lower tariffs, and if the Republicans won, there would be higher tariffs.
As part of Republican campaigning, in Indiana, the Republicans actually paid non-residential voters to vote for the Republicans. This was published in a newspaper by the Democrats. However, the Republicans claimed that it was false and that the Democrats were frauds. Fisk. Clinton B. Fisk was the candidate for the Prohibition Party of the 1888 presidential election. He was previously a part of the United States Army and was a successful banker. He was part of the Tennessee Freedmen's Bureau and helped to establish the first free schools in the South for both white and African American children. The Prohibition Party's main platform consisted of advocating against alcohol, or dry states. The picture in the upper right-hand side says, "This way for temperance and morality." Clearly, it is a poster supporting this Prohibition Party. Part 3.
The election of 1888 was between Grover the Good and the Front Porch Campaigner. Benjamin Harrison is the Republican candidate for the election of 1888, and Grover Cleveland is a Democratic candidate. There is also Clinton B. Fisk for the Prohibition Party.
Benjamin Harrison is from Ohio, and he previously served in the Civil War. He was also the grandson of William Henry Harrison, who held office and suddenly died of illness during his term in office. Thus, we believe that he has a very high chance of gaining presidency this year.
Benjamin Harrison's vice president was Levy P. Moore. Moore is also known as being a prominent banker, so he will benefit our company. In addition, we think that Harrison will go on to support tariffs in the future, which will also be good for our company, Illa Skittle. Higher tariffs mean more protectionist barriers that will aid this company against competition in the future.
Benjamin Harrison got his campaign up to $3 million, which proves he has the strength and capacity to be our president. He also supports bimetallism. While some people want gold and others want silver, Benjamin Harrison wanted to keep both in the economy so that it would be more stable, since taxpayers paid in silver and other countries demanded their debts be paid back in gold. Illa Skittle could benefit from this since it could stabilize the economy.
The person that we do not want to support is Grover Cleveland, and this is because he will definitely advocate for a lower tariff. He might also try to extend or reinforce his previous Interstate Commerce Act and extend it to businesses. So it might take a big hit on Illa Skittle.
To add on, there's an abundance of evidence that points to him not being able to successfully lead the country. If he can't take care of his own child, how is he supposed to take care of the U.S.?
Another one of the minor candidates, Clinton B. Fisk, should not be supported either. His ideas have mainly to do with prohibition and the banning of alcohol, so he is more likely to hurt some of the alcohol industry, which could still hurt the economy, even if it's still a small scratch. His ideas are not worth our company's support.
Ultimately, we believe that Benjamin Harrison is the best candidate worth for supporting in the 1888 election to help Illa Skittle.